I want to now transition into what you're building, and I'm excited to hear this, just considering your background and experience building other pitches and with storytelling. So maybe you can give me and the audience just an abbreviated pitch about what you're building, what the vision is that you see, and what problem you're solving.
Sure, we're building Imii, which is an AI-powered pocket assistant helping immigrants navigate their new life in a new country. So that's a short pitch.
Hmm.
Basically, it's a pocket coordinator that tells you where to go, what to do, which documents you need to bring, and whom you can speak to in your native language if you need to solve a problem or find childcare that speaks the language of your child, or legal assistance that can work with someone from your country, and so on.
And how do you know that this is a large problem that needs solving? And I mean, obviously, does not relate to me. I live in the born in the United States, live in the United States. Um, so maybe can you articulate on how you were able to say, okay, this is a problem that needs solving, and there's a sustainable and relatively large business that can be created here.
So, three things here. One is personal experience and the experience of a lot of people around me, which is quite often that's the source for ideas for someone starting a startup. Well, obviously, that's a close up, so that does not give you a bigger context why that would be a viable idea for a startup. Then there is data with immigration rising across the world, more and more countries introducing international mobility programs, especially those dealing with aging population. Even countries like Japan, which were never open to labor immigrants and talent immigrants, even they are now forced to change their legislation, their programs. And then finally, you study the market and see what who has invested and in what sort of projects have people invested in this field. So I found out that our biggest competitors are now based in the US, and they're building something that I actually want to build, which is pretty much, well, the vision is at some point to build a super app for immigrants. So that's what those guys in the US are building, and they raised $30 million to do that.
Mhm.
So that's, I mean, a good sign that there is a market, and some probably smart investors probably did some work in terms of verifying the hypothesis that this is a viable market. And also, there were some companies building something similar in the past, and which were quite successful. There was another company that built something similar in the USB, but different in terms of the product. They built a social network for immigrants that was designed to connect immigrants with the services in their language, with people who were born in the same areas that they were in their home country. So that had a very hyper local immigrant network focus. And those guys did really well. They went all the way to Series A. In Series A, they raised 12 mil, and they had 1 million users around the world, but they made a mistake in monetizing it too late. So probably because they were raising quite efficiently and they were running the company on investment money, and they were expanding rapidly. They moved from diaspora to diaspora, from region to region. They started in the US and they expanded to Europe and other markets. But they ran out of money in 2021. It was too late to properly monetize at that point, and they could not raise a Series B round because it was post-COVID. And, well, for various reasons, they could no longer continue their business, so they had to close down. It's a shame, really, because the app had over 1 million users, and they just had to
Yeah.
discontinue it. But now I'm trying to leverage the experience I had. I'm in touch with their founders, actually, and just try to build something that would be based on the best practices and learn from their mistakes and just try to do better.
And maybe you can articulate what, kind of a first person perspective of what an immigrant goes through when they do show up at their new country. I mean, maybe it is the UK, and what are the challenges that they face, or why is it so difficult for someone to assimilate in a new country?
Well, changing a country basically means having to rebuild your life from scratch. Because imagine you're living somewhere where you grew up or where you've been for at least a few years. You know your way around. You're probably fluent in the local language. If you have a family, your kids may be at school or in the nurseries. Your partner is employed somewhere or keeps themselves busy in some way. You have all the bank accounts, you have the credit score, you know how healthcare works. And then you move to another country where everything may be working differently, or it may be working in a similar way, but you still have to set everything up from scratch. And a large part of that process is not physically going somewhere and doing those things, but basically just sitting glued to your laptop or your phone and spending hours trying to navigate fragmented, often outdated and subjective information just to make sense of it and piece all these little pieces together. And then oftentimes you spend a lot of time on, say, flat viewings that you are not supposed to do because you didn't know that these areas are not really good for families with children, or you end up in a flat which has mold all over because you didn't know you're supposed to check for it. Like my example, my flat is almost flawless, uh, but the only reason why I don't have mold in my flat is because I'm just very lucky. I did not know there is a problem with mold in UK and in London when I was moving in. So for some reason, that bit of information just escaped my mind, and I didn't know that I'm supposed to check whether my flat is faulty in any way in that sense, or many other things, or like how do not get scammed by someone renting out a flat, because that happens all the time. So all these things lead to lots of time lost, lots of stress. Like I believe my flat search in London last year really contributed to me being diagnosed with depression and anxiety later that year. Uh, it did contribute a lot to that build up. And then also quite a lot of avoidable expenses can be optimized and excluded if you just centralize and structure that information, and especially if you provide access to it. Well, not necessarily in every language, that would probably be impossible, but thanks to different NLP enhanced tools, now you can provide that information in many more languages than just English or whatever language is local for the country.
Yeah, and so essentially, you're almost replacing Google, or like someone needs to just go on and just Google everything. Where do I live? Where do my kids go to school? How do I open a bank? And you're saying, here's our recommendations because we know the area, we know what's best for you as an immigrant. So it's just going to be that one stop shop for all resources for them.
Yep, it's a one-stop shop for resources. Plus, there is this AI component, which is not the key part of the solution. It's just something that provides a better user experience. So the Pocket Assistant part means that rather than Googling it by yourself or having to go through this database, if you don't feel confident and you know how to find it, you just, ask, almost like you would call a friend and ask, hey, how do I do this? And the AI assistant, which is trained on the database, provides you with the reply tailored to your question. So that's the idea. Obviously, a well fine-tuned assistant part is going to come later. We can't do it at early stage. But the idea is eventually to make this app which works exactly as a human coordinator or relocation manager, which is something that you can get if you're in a very high position relocated by a wealthy corporation. So to make that service accessible to everyone, that's the aim.
And what is the plan from a monetization standpoint? You mentioned that the immigration social network kind of folded because they didn't monetize soon enough. So I'm curious, is this going to be subscription based or maybe affiliate based? What?
Um, we see three different revenue streams here. We definitely don't want to monetize on all users on the B2C side because that would strip the project of its original social impact angle. There's no secret that a lot of immigrants coming in just do not have the spare funds to pay for something like that, which is fair. And they, I'd like to make it clear that this is not a relocation software. This is not HR tech. This is not relocation tech. This is, well, I like to think of it as global tech, something that makes the world more welcoming, global, and just. So we would not want to impose a paywall on that. But we definitely are considering a freemium solution where the premium version would just have some extended functions with the basic um, access to information and everything, which is, well, essential to make it work, would be available in the free version. We still don't think it's going to be our main source of monetization. Definitely not. So we're thinking affiliate marketing through businesses present on the platform. And as we grow in numbers, obviously advertising will also step in. And then we're hoping that this could be a viable B2B solution for small to medium businesses relocating their stuff. Because at the moment, we do see big businesses providing some sort of relocation assistance because they can afford it. But in fact, there are far more companies that do have the license to relocate their stuff, but they don't have the means to support every staff member that well. But they still want to be good employers. They still want to care about their employees and provide them with necessary support within their budget means. So I feel like this could be a good compromise and an employer and employee friendly solution that could be introduced.
And I'm always curious about this, and I don't want to assume, but I'm assuming you don't have a background in software development or building a tech based product, AI based, app based. And so I'm curious if that is something your founder is doing or how you're handling that. If you have a non technical background, how you're approaching building a.
Well, of course, first of all, my co founder is a product person. So she's the one with more tech expertise in our tandem. But also, it's essential to distinguish between the tech heavy solutions and non tech heavy solutions. So, despite the AI components in the product we're working in, basically it's still not deep tech, especially considering how much more democratized AI has become. It's really about assembling the existing bits and pieces of technology to make it work rather than developing something fundamentally new. In fact, developing an app like this is very easy. The hard part is connecting all these dots and all the components, bringing in people, marketing it to enough people in the B2C market, bringing in all the providers to land them on the part which connects with the service providers, uh, developing the community within the app, reaching out to the B2B providers and making the white label solution for the employers. So there are a lot of things which just require a lot of connecting, a lot of communicating, even the content piece, to provide the content which is different to what Google can offer. There is a lot of manual work that has to be done. There is a lot of content creation moderation. Obviously, it's not just about manual content creation because you can't possibly do that for every geography. There has to be a combination of manual content creation and scraping. But still, it's not very technical. It's just a lot of tedious work, and it's about piercing this ready-made technical solutions with the right approach, with the right work on the side of business. So that's one of the reasons why I'm building it, not just because I'm an immigrant myself, not because I recognize the problem, but also because I see it as the best application of my current skills and experience. I am the connector, so I'm connecting those dots.
And you mentioned it there that you're an immigrant yourself. So I'm curious what immigration taught you as you look back on your life. I mean, do you look back on that decision to move to a new country as something that shaped you today, or what specifically did it do to allow for growth or exploration yourself?
Interesting question. I wouldn't say my major takeaways have been from my personal immigration. I'm an immigrant born and raised. I'm a third culture kid because I was born and raised in Japan. And when I think about it, the kind of immigration processes we're undergoing now are nothing compared to what my dad went through when he moved to Japan in the early 90s. That's pre-internet era. Like, how did you even get around back then with no cell phones, no navigators, no Google? And that just drives me mad when I imagine it. So what we're doing now is really so much easier. So in that sense, I guess the example of my parents has taught me that geographical borders are, well, just one of the variables in the equations of our lives. It can be easily changed. And having immigrated a few times, Um, I guess it just deepened my belief in the fact that we can live and work in almost any country we want to. And if you're not happy living somewhere or doing something, it's all about, well, trying different ways to solve the problem until one of them works. I genuinely treat goals as tasks to solve because a goal is a bit more abstract. You can either hit it or not. When you've got a task to solve, then you just keep trying different ways to solve it until one of them works. So, yeah, I guess immigration is one of the best ways to learn it. Oh, and also it kind of puts you in a situation where, it's leave it or take it. You're either staying in the country and you're dealing with it and you're, well, solving your problems one by one because that's the only way, or you leave.
And do you lend that maybe your experience with immigration to leading you down a path of founding a company, or have you not thought of it in that way?
Mm, I don't know. I don't think this specifically led me into it. I do see a lot of companies in UK, and not just in UK, founded by immigrants. Well, that's the case in the US as well. Um, but I guess maybe one of the possible drivers of this phenomenon is just the fact that we already have to push a certain number of boundaries and challenges. So for us, comfort zone is often already non-existent. Like when people ask me how did you get out of your comfort zone, I was like, I don't know that I had one to step out of. So you just see it just as another barrier to push, just as another boundary that you can easily, you know, knock down and go further.
Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense. And so maybe just to kind of close this out, you're in the building phase. So for Imii over the next year, and then maybe in 5 years, where do you see? So what are your priorities over the next year, and where do you see this going in 5 years' time?
Well, as I think I mentioned, the vision is to build a super app for immigrants. I don't know if that's going to be viable in 5 years' time, but I hope it is. Again, considering that this is not a deep tech solution, it's just about building a business that grows steadily and sustainably and gains traction. Um, so let's say the ideal vision is to see that super app going live within the 5 years' time. And then, well, as of now, I would probably see ourselves exiting it within the next 5 to 7 years, and then maybe building something even more ambitious. I mean, it may all change because it's my first business, right? I may fall in love with it and never want to exit, or something may, well, something else may change, and I may want to eventually exit it and not build a new business or build something in healthcare, as I mentioned, because that would be still my sweet spot. Or maybe found a charity. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But for now, I'm focused on our goals for, say, this year. And this year, all I want to do is to fundraise and to launch products and to see first traction and first B2B contracts to, well, basically help us fund our business without having to get venture capital. Because my concern with venture capital is that it would be challenging for us to find a venture capital firm that would align with our social impact goals. If we do, that would be brilliant. But if not, we'd have to think of a way to grow without it, which is not impossible, but it's just going to be more challenging.